Well, thank you everyone for having me today. I'm Barbara Zamora-Appel. I work in the Economic Directorate in the Census Bureau. And you may have seen me before talking to you about the Census Business Builder. And today I'm excited to introduce you, if it's your first time, to My Community Explorer. So My Community Explorer is a new dashboard that we have at the Census Bureau that we began having conversations about earlier this year. At the beginning, we wanted to have something that would provide access to equity data, because that's the mandate from President's Executive Order 13985. As we moved into our discussions, we realized that there was a great opportunity to showcase not only Census Bureau data that we're very familiar with, but also layers from other federal agencies that provide data that is relevant to emergency preparedness and or understanding community resilience. So what the dashboard is, and I want to emphasize that it's a dashboard, it's not a tool. So that makes it a lot easier and faster to update and to add more or to take out. So it's interactive, it's map-based dashboard that highlights demographic and socioeconomic data. The data that you will see here was specifically designed to provide a purpose or to showcase a specific reason. So there's not a lot of data, but we do have a lot of links that take you back to the rest of the data. So the data here measure inequality and help inform data-based solutions. So the dashboard is designed to help users identify underserved communities. And the genesis for this is to understand diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in the federal workforce. So here I have the URL, and when I go live, you'll see how easy it is to find it. You can Google it. You can find it through various pages within the Census Bureau and or through links that have been provided to you by your friends and colleagues. The data sources we have here are specific data from the American Community Survey, data from the Community Resilience Estimates, county business patterns, non-employer statistics, and the Gini Index. And I want to take a moment I understand that most of you know about the American Community Survey, county business patterns, but the Community Resilience Estimates is rather new. And this was launched in 2020 as a new and innovative data tool or at least that data, for national agencies and local communities to understand risk. So the CRE tracks how at risk every single neighborhood in the United States is to impacts of, at that time, COVID-19, but it can be applied for many other impending disasters such as hurricanes, floods, fires, heat. So it measures the capacity of individuals and households at absorbing, enduring, and recovering from the external stresses of the impacts of a disaster. So from the beginning of the pandemic, the negative effects of COVID-19 have been strongly related to certain individual and household characteristics. And with access to granular microdata from the Census Bureau, the CRE maps the risk assessment of local populations down to the neighborhood level and allows national and community leaders to more efficiently respond to emergencies. So the way that it works is there's three risk factors that we have added to this particular tool. 0 risk signifies low risk for the community. 1 to 2 risk factors means medium risk, or 3 or more risk factors mean high risk, meaning that is the community or neighborhood or county that would need the most resources in case of an emergency. Some of the risk factors that are available, there's actually 10. They have income to poverty ratio, they have single or zero caregiver household. So that's for individuals living in the household who are 18 to 64 years old. Unit level crowding, communication barriers, age 65 years of old or older. Coverage, no vehicles, access, households without broadband. The non-census data is data that as we were building this tool, we realized that it would be important to add because one of the bigger reasons is emergency preparedness. So if I know that there is a hurricane coming, or if I know that there are fires, that would make it easier for me or my community to be prepared for such an event. So we have data from a variety of sources. So the active hurricanes and cyclones and typhoons comes from NOAA. The USA weather watches and warnings from the National Weather Service. Storm surge risk from NHC. USA current wildfires from Irwin. Air quality monitoring from EPA. And the National Weather Service 3-day min-max temperature forecast. So the data from these layers, some of that data is about 4 days old. So this is pretty much very current data. And a lot of the data, or I should say most of the data, it can be displayed via layers. So here you can see I have the population 65 plus from ACS displayed. I have the wildfires displayed, and then I have hurricanes. I want to actually mention that this dashboard was released right before hurricane season. That's why when you first get in the dashboard, you will see the hurricane information. It's already displayed. Most of the time, you don't see a hurricane because it's not something that common in non-hurricane season months. But it is something to display, and I wanted to show this particular graphic because it just shows what is happening at any one time. You can turn on all the layers at once, but it becomes very busy and confusing. So I recommend that you just go one by one, depending on what it is that you want. The geography levels, we have state and county that you can see display. So the state and the county. When you first get to the dashboard, the data you will see will be national data. But once you input the state and the county, then this will populate with that data, as well as the different profiles that I'll show you in a minute. The track level data is the lowest data that we have, and to get there, all you have to do is double click or click until you get to the level that you need, which in this case is track. That data will be displayed in this window, and as you hover around and click around different areas within the map extent, that will generate the data relatable to that geography that you just clicked on. We have several county profiles, and these data will populate at the county level. So when you choose your county here, that's the data that will be displayed, or the data will be displayed for that particular geography. So as you can see, this is just for that one. So in this instance, I had a Los Angeles County, and so all the profiles will be related to that. And you can see how it displays depending on what data is showing. So the economic profiles we have, the county profiles we have are economic, social characteristics, race and ethnicity, and business profile. And I want to emphasize that the data that is here is what we have heard and we ourselves have understood to be the most relevant data to add to a dashboard like this. However, if there is data that you think we should add that is not currently here, please let me know. We have planning meetings with the developers every Thursday, so we have a great opportunity to update based on need. And as I can understand it, the data that will be more relevant in, say, in the coastal regions may not be as relevant in the mid part of the country. So that is the feedback that I would like to have, and I greatly appreciate. So to send feedback to us, you can send it to me, since you will have my contact info, or Barbara. But also at the very top of this dashboard, you have an email that you can send feedback to. And that goes back to a team at the Census Bureau, where we will receive it, and based on what it is, we'll discuss it. And if it makes sense to add it, then it'll be added in the next release. So there's a few case studies, what we think could be used for. So emergency preparedness is the big one. And this tool, we actually have shared it with other federal agencies that deal with emergency preparedness. And what feedback we've received is that they like the fact that not only do we have the key demographic and economic data, but also the layers that we can add. So in this case, the use case that I have selected here is if you are an official in a particular geography, county or community, you can actually, by viewing the data in a particular way, you can prepare for an impending potential events or disaster. And that way you at least understand what it is that is coming and how you can best prepare for it. So having the CRE data, the community resilience estimates, helps understanding that. And I know that if you're a part of a community, you know your community, but having this additional data has helps a lot. So let me go live now. And when you first get to the tool, actually, let me just show you how to get to the tool different ways. So first, you can Google it and you'll get to it, but also you can go to census.gov, and we have a number of places where you can find it. One is, and this page was recently updated, so please bear with me. So we do have a data equity tools page, and we also have the COVID-19 hub, if you're familiar with that one. So you'll find this particular dashboard there. So with the data equity tools, this again goes back to that executive order 13985. And as I believe that most agencies in the federal government have this mandate. So all of us are adding pages that will have a direct line to what it is that we're working on, or the information we have that is helpful with the data equity. We have the Census Business Builder. Hopefully, a lot of you are familiar with it. We have the Census Poverty Status Viewer. We have the Digital Equity Act Population Viewer. So we have a lot of that. We have the Community Resilience Estimate Equity Supplement. So if you're more interested, or if you have an interest in learning more about the CRE, you can go there. And here it is, my Community Explorer. So we can click from there, or you can, as I mentioned earlier, you can type it within census.gov and you'll get to it. When you first arrive here, you'll be welcomed by this little box. And what essentially it is, it tells you what to do. Our first iteration, this had I think it was like 5 or 6 different paragraphs to explain what it was that you were getting into. The dashboard looked very different. We used to have 2 maps, but it became a little confusing. So with feedback from our users, the public, our friends, our colleagues, we have now updated it to this. We just got additional funding, so there will be more updates. So please, again, I take this seriously. If you have feedback, please send it to us, especially feedback that you think is going to benefit more than just your community. You can just X out of it or just click out on the map. And this is the map. We have, if we go around top left, we can start. This is the feedback where you can send it to. There's again for the feedback. Again, this is very important to us. So when you get to the CRE, that's the data that you first see. And again, that's because that is one of the core data sets that was found to be more important to have in this particular tool. And then we have the layer legends. So if you want to see Alaska or Hawaii, you go to the bookmark. So once you get to the bookmark, you click on Alaska or Hawaii, or go back to the lower 48. And there are plans on adding more data for the US territories, including Puerto Rico. So in case you're wondering about that. To get to the layer, to get to the legend, here's the information. Because we have the CRE, this is what is showing. As I mentioned earlier, there's 3 risk factors: is 0, 1 to 2, or 3 plus. So the areas, here's New Mexico. This is this swath over here is a particular area to note that the CRE factor is higher, is more than 3 or 3, as is in South Dakota and other places. And here are the layers. As I mentioned earlier, we have hurricanes open, but since there's nothing right now, as you can see, it's pretty clean. If there was a hurricane somewhere around here, it actually shows it from this way all the way up, it will actually be displayed. And that's the picture that I had earlier. Since we have no hurricanes, I'm going to turn that off. You can see weather watches or warnings. I have my camera off because my network is actually spotty, but hopefully this will display. So there's some weather watches. Let's see wildfires. That's always an interesting thing to show. So there are wildfires all over the country, and this around. So that is the whole country. And you can see all the wildfire. Again, this data is approximately 4 days old, so it's pretty recent. And see, New Mexico has what appears to be 4 fires, and one is rather large down here. So you can still continue navigating with the layers. If you want to see some census data, let me move this out. Here's some census data, non-employer statistics that you can turn on. You have the population below poverty. And if you want to see more of New Mexico, we can just zoom in a little bit more. We have broadband counties with or areas with broadband. There is a question about showing no broadband access, and that is a plan to add it. I think there is, you know, with everything, there's some challenges we have to overcome, but that is something that we are discussing. Why? Because it is when planning for hard to reach communities, those without broadband is important for us to know. It's great that everybody here seems to have it, but we want to know more about those without it. Here's the one for educational attainment, race and ethnicity. So if you, that's why I keep closing and opening, because otherwise it's very hard to see what is there. Language spoken at home. Gonna turn this off. And you get how it works. So here's the predominant risk factors that's turned on. So going to the top, the data is available via tables for all of the data that we have here. So all of this is downloadable. So we have the ACS, county business patterns, non-employer statistics. We have the data sources. And all of this, you can click on them to go to their source. Same thing is for the live feeds. This is where all of the non-census data is. And you can also search it. We have the about. This one has a lot of what I'm telling you now. So it gives you an overview as to what it is that you'll find, the data that you'll see, the layers that you'll get, the site features, the map features, and the data. We also have a video demo. So if you want to go back after we finish today's demonstration and explore it more, I encourage you to do that. That video should be updated with every iteration, but sometimes there's a little bit of a delay, so please bear with us. Here again is the video demo. We wanted to have it in both places just in case. And here again is the data that we all thought was the most relevant to display. So now let's go here. I'm going to go to New Mexico since that's where you are. And then click on any county. So let's see, Gatron County. I'm not as familiar with New Mexico. So now that I have checked that, these profiles will then be populated with the data relevant to that particular county. So here's the data that I mentioned. We have the Gini index of income inequality. And in case you're wondering what it is, here's the hot link. You can check households, income below poverty. And so you can go around here. And anytime that you click or hover over any of these charts, it will give you additional information. So here is the social characteristics, race and ethnicity, and the business profile. What we like about this dashboard is that it's pretty easy to use and navigate. And we want to know that what we have put here is relevant to you. So that is the dashboard, short and sweet. If you want to go down to track level, you just have to, let's pick this, Socorro. Keep clicking and clicking. And here we are. We're still in the county, but I want to go further down. And this is a census tract. So this census tract that I'm on, this is the information that we have. So we have the income below poverty level, broadband subscription. So we see that in this particular tract, 60% of households have broadband subscription. And so we can deduce from that about 40% don't have it. So this is the data we have. We can hover over this to give you more information. At the county level only, not at the tract level, you can click on the, let me just, if I go back to a county level, you have a link back to Census Business Builder that will give you the report with all the data that we have available for that county in that state. We have hot links for actually all of the sources throughout this dashboard. And if you want to highlight something in big, you have to just click this little circle with the arrows. And then here it has the direct link back to data.census.gov if you want to see more of that data. And as well as the methodology. Okay, any questions?
Hi, this is Scott Hughes. Just a question. How often are the new iterations posted?
That's an excellent question. It's all depending on the funding we have. I believe that this is the third iteration since March. So
Okay.
we're updating it very often, and it's based on what need arises. So if we find that there is something that, wow, that makes sense to add and let's do it quick, then it goes that way. But it's really all dependent on funding and or big things that we want to add.
Okay, and second question then, do you have a core group that is providing commentary and input, or is it just open to anyone who is a user?
At this point, because it's so new and we kind of like did it very, very fast. It went from concept to actual prototype rather quickly. Feedback I've been collecting, not just myself, but others as we demo these dashboards. And in fact, we got some feedback from advisory group a few weeks ago, the NAC. So that's how we collect the feedback. Are you interested in being one of our testers?
No, not right at this time, but I just wanted to know what that structure was. So thank you.
Yeah, no, as soon as we have something or right before it goes live, we try to share it with as many groups as we can so that we know that what we're trying to accomplish is the right thing.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We've got another question over here.
Okay.
Thank you. This is a good presentation and a lot of really good information. And I know that, as you noted, that all federal agencies have been required to address inequalities and environmental justice. And I was wondering if there's been internal coordination or alignment between different priorities and standards, or is this something that due to different agencies' requirements or needs that this kind of each entity or each agency is building its own kind of set of criteria for these thresholds?
In terms of threshold for data, I know that there's several of my colleagues who are involved in interagency efforts across the government. I, for instance, am involved with another interagency group that deals with I'm sorry, I always have a hard time saying this, meteorological efforts. So anything related to weather. And what we're doing is collaborating. In fact, we had as an interagency effort a workshop back in May where we shared what we have and what we are working on in terms of this equity effort. And that has led to collaboration across agencies. Census Business Builder, for instance, is used by FEMA and NOAA for emergency preparedness. And My Community Explorer now, as is starting to be used by other agencies as well. So the coordination is there. And I know Census is trying very hard to have that collaboration better tracked, because many of us are with different interagency efforts with NOAA, for instance, across the agency, and none of us are working with the same people. So it's so very decentralized right now, but it is something that we're trying to formalize. But as you can imagine, with so many different people working on so many different efforts, it's a little bit hard, but that is the goal.
Great, thank you so much. Great to
welcome.
hear.
Yes.
Any other questions? I did have one about the API development. Is this particular dashboard have its own API and therefore a whole new documentation, or does the API that the Census Bureau website offers in parallel with this dashboard?
So the dashboard, if you're familiar with ArcGIS from Esri, they have what they call services. So all the data that is used here is actually being pulled from services with the dashboard within the environment of ArcGIS. So that's why the data pulls in very quickly, because it's already been uploaded. So this, again, this is one of the differences between a tool like Census Business Builder, which does pull directly from the API, and a dashboard which pulls from these layers. So this is how you can see the Esri team put this data within that environment in ArcGIS, and that's how it pulls. So we are not using the API in a way that we typically use with like CVB for this tool.
So does that mean that this dashboard will not implement, even as if it's with Esri or through Esri, a particular API platform?
I don't believe that we're using the API for that right now. And again, it's another nuance of the dashboard idea. Is not hard coded.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, before we move on, if there are any questions from the people who are signed into Teams, please feel free either to raise your hand or to put it in chat. Barbara, if you want to continue, I don't see any hands raised or any questions in chat.
Okay, since I have you here, and since I work on both things, Census Business Builder and My Community Explorer, and since we actually are linked via this, I would like to show you today, Barbara, if it's okay with you, what we're releasing in exactly a few weeks.
Please do.
Thank you. So Census Business Builder has evolved. And let me go back to the beginning. So you are used to, let me see if I have one open. You're used to this. You're used to having two versions of CVB, this one and the RAE version. And you're used to clicking a few times, picking up a geography, either going to a report or going to the map, and then arriving here. So that's what you're used to. So let me introduce you to the new CVB that we're very proud to present to you after 6 years of having this. So CVB is converging both SPE and RAE. Why? Because we started seeing and hearing from users that they're using this two tools by the same person for one reason or another. It was just becoming easier to have, or became easier for us to think, how can we make it easier for the user rather than go to two different tools, just have one where they can have the similar experience to what they're used to. So this is it. We moved away from the splash page that we used to come to. Let me go back to this and bringing you to this one. Right now, because it's so new, we have a tour that you can take. You can click 42 times if you want to, and you go around all the different features and the different data. So it highlights and it tells you what it is. If you have time to go over it, it's it's an interesting way of seeing CVB. But if you don't want to do that, and if you want to simply go back to the front, to the welcome page, you can choose to go to a geography from here. And I go always to Fairfax County because that's where I am. So it's easy for me. But this is what it looks like. So what we have done also is have moved away from the colorful map that we had. We still have it. We actually have various colors that you can choose from, the green, blue. We have coral, the unique colors, and the yellow, green, blue. All of these colors are FABOA compliant. It's one of the things that we had with our contractor Esri, making sure that all of this was FABOA compliant. We have always had this challenge that the map is not something that the computer readers can read, but at least if we can do it for the minimal requirements, that is great. In addition to what they have done here, the Census Bureau has an office, a FABOA compliant office, and we're working with them to make sure that everything else is reviewed. So when you first come here, right now we have a bug, and this is still a testing environment. This is not live yet. So when you first come here, this dashboard will be closed. But right now there's a bug and it has it open. But once you click on a county or a zip code or any of those things, we have the ability to change around. So again, the same experience, you can click around and it should display the data rather quickly. This is pulling directly from the API for that person that asked a question. And the API typically works, but there's some times where it's not. And then you'll see a window that pops up over here with a lot of yellow. Some of you may be familiar with that. We get it when we least expect it, and when that happens, there is a delay because of the API. So this is, it got to be cleaner, nicer to look at, and if you want to experience the same way that it was before, you can highlight specific ones. If you want to, you can customize the dashboard. If you want to, like say if you don't want to see the average revenue, you can go here and click something else, non-employers, perhaps that, you can do that. So the stars mean that once you click on it, it will actually highlight it here. We have the geo ranking, time series, geo comparison, create a report. You can configure this either with other variables or not. You can do that. And for the bivariates, in the current one, we had it stacked over one another, but we decided to separate it to make it easier. So this is where the first variable is chosen, and here is the variable that you want to pick. So say that you wanted to know some socioeconomics like median household income. And it automatically displays as you saw. You can X out or you can remove the variable if you want to. And for the future, one of my nice to haves is when I hover over here, that it tells me the data. It's a nice to have. So it's all depending on funding and time. So that is the, we now have added all of the geographies on this side. Before you could actually change it on this window. So see that this used to be stacked and this is used to be where you can change the geography. Now it's all here. It's easier, I think, to navigate that way. And we have the state, metro, county, city, town, zip code track. To the right, we can download the data, same as before, CSV, Excel, and shapefiles. We have the reference layers that we can add layers. These ones have not changed since, I would say, 4 years ago. So if there is a reference layer that you think we should add that is not here, and it could be used by others, let me know. We have the base maps, and we now have hard-coded a way to measure how often people use these different features. Because right now we have them, but we don't know if anybody uses them. And then, of course, the transparency, if you can see more or less of the map. That's there. The legend also changed, or at least the legend area. This is where you can choose the different colors. We also added natural breaks, and we had quantile and equal intervals. Rather than having to click twice, you can actually see all of it here. We still have the access out to a flyer, one of the flyers that I created. All of those will be updated. This is due to be released live on December 2nd. It may be December 5th for PIO's purposes. This is where you can create your custom cluster. And one thing we just added, which I'm very, very happy with, is it actually gives you a direct link into the NICS codes. We do know that a lot of new business owners are just learning about the North American classification system. So we thought that it made sense to add them here because they can go and they can, anybody really, and you can see what each of those industries have as in terms of NIPS code. As in the previous ones, you can still search for industries via a NICS code and or the name that you have. So if you know that you want pet food, it should draw, and then it gives you that. That's something that we've always liked, rather than just giving you what we think you should get. And those are the changes. Now let me close this down. That was the experience from SBE that I just gave you, and I'll give you RAE. So RAE is the region builder. And it has the same options that we had before, the rectangle. So if you want to build a region like that, which is unrealistic because I realized that a lot of regions are pieces of counties, or mostly you can build a region with zip codes or city towns or counties. It's a mix that you can do. And it's easy to do. Right now, my network seems to be very, very good because it drew really fast. And sometimes that doesn't happen. You can clear it up. If you haven't noticed, in the last 2 edition releases, we added the Weather Forecast Office pre-selected regions. You can select a WFO. If I want to go to Albuquerque, for instance, it just draws it there. The squares means there is no data, but for some reason this is taking a little while longer to draw, but that is the region. I'm going to clear that out. And we just added the SBA hub zones. Every time that I went to conferences pre-pandemic times, and I will say 2019 was the last one, I kept hearing about the SBA hub zones every time I went to an SBA and or business related conference. And so it made sense to add this, but it took a little while for us to actually get with the program and add it. So this is very new. So if you get a chance to use them, please let me know how they work for you, because we need to know if these things work. We've also added the HUD opportunity zones. This was something also that I kept hearing at these conferences, and it made sense to have it because, as I understand it, there is funding that is allocated for these particular types of zones. So those are the pre-built regions that we have. So let's just build something. Let's see quickly so that I can show you the report. And as the previous ones, you can name it from here. I would say Mexico. I can't type today. Finish. And now we can create the report. And the report has also been updated to look crisper, easier to use. This is where all of the counties are shown. You can still go and create a report just for that one county or this whole county. So each one, you can actually click on each one of those and it'll build you a new report. With everything as before, we can download it CSV, Excel, or PDF. We have the settings that you can customize if you would like, displaying the MOEs, which is important. And here you can customize the section. So if there's areas that you don't want, you can close them. Let's see, if I want to close about data, it will disappear, but I want to show you right now. And to me, it looks nicer than in previous times. And as what you're used to too, you can still customize it. If the data is available, it will display. And we made some changes so that it actually shows you the data and it's not like hard to read. Sometimes it becomes convoluted, and I understand that sometimes it's not easy to read. We have, since we now have this just one report that draws for the new combined SBRE, it means also that anyone and everyone will get the business comparison, which previously was only available in the regional analyst edition and not the small business edition. Same with the employer ownership. Consumer spending, we will be adding updated data, not in this iteration in December, but the one in, I believe is in March. And with the same experience that we had every year, we get the full list from Esri, and it's several hundred lines long. And we, meaning the team at Census, chooses which of the data is relevant based on the data we have in CBB. We keep hearing that people like this. That's why we continue to pay for it. We pay for it so that people can use it for free. We do have about the data. It's important to have it. But this is kind of, I want to show you how easy it is to close it if you don't need it or want it. So if you are sharing this with your colleagues and you want to hide some components, especially those that don't have data, for instance, this one, the building permits, we have now for 3.1, we're going to be closing those up. So anytime that there is no data available, it will automatically close them so that the user doesn't get to see something that is empty. So that is a report. As you're used to also, the URL, if you want to share this URL with your colleagues or friends, that is, you send them this URL and they will take you to the specific page that you were at. So all of these, so if I wanted to share this, which to me doesn't display very much data, they will be able to actually come exactly to where you have it. So those are the big changes, and we're still taking feedback. User experience, customer experience is very important and is core to these tools and dashboards. So I really encourage you, and I think some of you know that feedback that you have asked us for or that you have given us in the past has been implemented. So all of these things that we added, I would say came from user feedback. A lot of them are based on things that I hear at conferences or Andy used to hear at conferences and events. But the core of the feedback that we get is through these exchanges. Nick Orsini, my associate director, does have one request, and that is that anytime that there is a request, he doesn't want to hear it from me. He wants to hear it from you. So sending an email always helps, because that also gives us more ability to get more funding if the request requires a higher level of effort. So that's CBB. What do you think? Any questions?
I have a question, Barbara.
Yes.
You pointed up in the upper right, and I believe it's saying send feedback.
Yes.
Okay, that's the best place to send it, correct?
So this goes to EWD outreach. So Linda and Erlene, people you know, they will get it. And then if the process works great, it means that then I will get it. Before we used to have it as Andy. It was his email address, but he's no longer at the agency. So it's a group of people that will get it, and it then it's not just feedback of something that you would like to see in here, but also what broke. Oftentimes, I'm on CB or My Community Explorer pretty much since very early in the morning, but many times I actually hear from users that something is not working, and this is the way that we hear it. So we know it works.
Again, if there's any questions from the people who signed in directly through Teams, please either raise your hand or place it in chat. Are there any questions in the room, Pedro?
Any questions from anyone?
I was just wondering if you could go over some of the like sources that you guys are pulling these from. Go back
Of
to
the
the
data?
slide.
Okay, so the slide that I was sharing with you today was for my Community Explorer. So let me actually get my other deck. So let me do this. Barbara knows I've been doing a lot of presentations lately, so I have a few presentations.
Barbara has been very good to the data users and the state data centers across the United States doing presentations for them. So she's been a very busy person. So going back and forth, she just got to find it a minute.
Yes, do you see it?
Yes, now we've got it, Barb.
We see it here
this is-
too.
Yeah, this is the data we have in CBB. And we are working on adding more data. For instance, the government's data, it is a process and it has been an arduous process going back for almost 5 years. So we're still working on trying to get this up. But we do have some selected data from ACS and many of the other sources here. And what we did differently with CBB, differently than other tools at this Bureau, is the data that we have here is data that the users have asked for. So the 21 plus, for instance, we went to the Beer Wholesalers of America conference, we went to a meeting with them. We displayed this tool many years ago, and they said, this is great. At that time, we only had 18 plus, 65 plus, under 5. And they said, this helps, but doesn't really help us greatly. We need 21 plus, and voila, we added it. So that is how we have made this tool work. So again, if there's data that you don't see here that you think is relevant to you, but also could be relevant to others across the country, we will add it. So this is an example of the data we have that is not Census Bureau data, the agriculture data from USDA and NAS, the employment and related data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and quarterly census of employment and wages. So those are non-census data, and CBB was the first tool at the agency that combined data that was not just census. The consumer spending data is private sector data. Does that answer your question?
Just out of curiosity, would you guys be able to or willing to also reference data from like departments of transportation? Because I feel like it would be relevant for both the CBB and also the Community Explorer.
That is an excellent idea. Would you mind sending an email with that request? I'm serious, because that would make it this is a user ask, and Nick Orsini will be very happy to see that. So yes, that is the type of feedback that I like, because now I know that there's at least one or more users that could benefit from it, and then we do the ask, we reach out to the agency, and then later, a few iterations later, we may have it. That's how we added the WFO data, the weather forecasting offices. Many years ago, in 2017 or 18, we built a page on census.gov with the weather forecasting offices. And we had it. And then earlier this year, I thought, well, why can't we just add it in CBB? I mean, if people are using it, why not have it there? And it was easy to connect with the right people at NOAA to have it done. So thank you for that suggestion.
Barbara, I'd like to throw out a comment in here if I could, please. When we started building data.census.gov, we beta tested through a lot of people. And the first beta test was basically about blank links. These two projects, because of the speed at which they were built and the knowledge base that we had to build them, we didn't quite go that route. But everything that was done in data.census.gov, I shouldn't say everything, the majority came from feedback. If we get your feedback, it's very, very important to us because then we can start aligning. It may not come with the next iteration coming out, but it can be put into the budgets as they work. And that's what has happened with things that have gone into CBB and my community builder, and they have come into data.census.gov. And I just got a question in chat that said, what is the email address for requests to be sent to? The best email address is the one that we told you or showed you on the one slide on the live, right up here in the corner. Barbara's pointing to it now. Send your feedback, because that goes to everybody that needs it. The same way with the other tools that we have. When you see feedback, it's not just going to one person, it's going to the team that's working on that product. And with that, I will be quiet again, Barbara.
And Barbara, you know, Barbara, you made a great point, and we often in my team don't realize it, but this tool that you see here, users, is a tool that was built by users. We started with a very cranky, very different prototype. We had a very rustic prototype that we started building based on feedback. We used to have a pretty substantial travel budget back in 2015 and 16, and we were traveling everywhere in the United States. I think I met many of you that way. And all of the feedback that we got through those conferences, those focus groups, those at the time we were not doing very many webinars, it was just in person. All of that led to building what you have here. All the variables we added were added because you told us, you, the users, told us to add them. All of the different features. You said we would like to see more than one data set on the map, and here we have it by variant mapping. And it has taken years. And with Andy, we would joke because our wish list kept growing and growing, and our funding kept getting smaller and smaller. But we were able to adopt all of those things. And the fact that we now have one place for everyone to come and have the experience, it's a long way coming. And even adding the geo ranking, the time series, all of those are fairly new. Industry clusters, the ability for you to build your own cluster. You know, we heard from people for instance, in Florida saying, you know what, my tourism cluster is very different than what there is a cluster, I think, of tourism somewhere in the government, but it doesn't have what Floridians need. And for people in New Mexico, your tourism cluster will not have water sports to the extent that Florida has them or Hawaii has them. So we heard all of that throughout this. So that feedback seriously is very important to us. But more than anything, and I got to emphasize this because I was reminded of this by my division chief just 2 days ago, that I do need to have that feedback in writing. So it has more weight when it comes in writing. Rather than when you tell me here, I bring it back and I still discuss it and we still may implement it, but it carries more weight if it's in writing. So I really appreciate that. Thank you. Any other questions?
I think that's it.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I think my contact information is here somewhere. Let me see. There it is for anyone that wants to get in touch with me. And I can speak about CBB and MCE and a few other, like COVID-19 Hub also. It's being phased out now, but it has a lot of great information and links there if you want to check it out.
Thank you so much to both Barbaras for the presentation. Let's give a round of applause, please. We're going to take a little break and we'll be back at 3:30, I believe. So don't go too far.
Thank you.
Thank you all.